This is a very, very important question for all organizations to consider right now, regardless of your industry. We hear it all about in the news now that digital transformation has become even more imperative than ever because of the pandemic, because things have changed. And endorsing the digital economy has become a major priority. So, the use cases that we were already implementing for organizations around digital risk management are just as important. It's just the urgency's picked up. And in some cases, the scope is growing. Now, I'll explain in all three cases. With respect to cyber attacks are up over 700% since the pandemic started. The bad guys didn't go away and take a break because of the pandemic. It's got worse. So organizations need to be in a position where they're protecting as best as possible and responding as quickly as possible. So the pressure to get good vulnerability response programs that are effective, protecting the right crown jewels, protecting where key assets are so that you are safe has never been more important. And under the security incident response use case in cyber risk, the ability to be able to prioritize extremely quickly on incidents that could have the biggest impact against your organization and responding quickly, never more important since the pandemic because of this increase in cyber attacks. IT as well, with everybody working remotely now, or the interest of cyber attacking remote users that maybe you don't have the right security in place now that could also impact your business has become really critical. And also just internal attacks within the organization. So there's been much more of a focus around that whole cyber risk program for organizations since the pandemic. The second one is the effect it's had on third party or vendor risk. And most organizations were already down the path of analyzing vendor risk, but they had never really thought about, are our vendors resilient? And can they work remote? Can they provide products to us if we need it in our supply chain? It has opened up that whole problem set for organizations to try to solve. The other one that's really interesting that we've seen as an uptake because of the pandemic when it comes to vendor risk is the importance now of concentration risk. I was at a CEO conference in February and it just hit. And what was very interesting, the gentleman beside me was in a fencing business. All of his product options to source were all from China. So all of a sudden his concentration risk, where I thought I had three different suppliers I could order from, became a big issue from him because all of China was shut down. So you also think of that in a technology standpoint. If you're using a cloud service and all of a sudden you start to realize that that vendor is actually supplying three different services to our organization, and if for some reason they can't operate, we're now exposed. It's just really opened people's eyes to, it's just not that first vendor. There's also could be the fourth or fifth party, as we call it, instead of just third. Plus this whole issue around concentration of in a specific area. We used to think about this as natural disasters. If I buy all my product in California and there's a disaster, could I be exposed in my supply chain? Now the pandemic's opened us to different ways of looking at concentration risk. So we're finding that particular program, vendor risk, has taken on a whole new meaning under this. The final piece, and probably the biggest one, but I actually look at this one as something that will come into play more into the summer, which is business resiliency. Right now, most organizations are continuing to deal and respond with the pandemic. But as we get through this and the threat of a second wave or other pandemics, organizations are going to have to review that whole business resiliency program. And it's changed significantly from this. And I'll explain why. A year ago, if we sold a business continuity program, it generally was, here's a set of assets. I need to do a business impact assessment against those, understand where my key values are, a business continuity program and business plans around that. And then maybe if I'm really advanced, a crisis management system. What the pandemic has done is opened our eyes that the scope was way under scoped, in the sense that we were looking maybe at some specific assets or processes, but it's opened up the idea that we never really thought about HR resiliency. What if someone gets sick? That's a key role in the company, or can't work remotely. Have we thought through that? So the whole HR piece, I talked about already, the third, fourth party, and Are they resilient to be able to continue to help us deliver services if something like this happens? And we also see the IT side and other areas being more focused now because of the pandemic, that the scope of everything I've got to look at that allows me to operate becomes much more critical. And it's also put a focus on, because of all that, how does it relate to each of my business units or my business lines of business? So this whole idea of a business resiliency program has taken on a whole new meaning. And what's interesting, I was talking to a vice president of business resiliency, and she mentioned to me, a big insurance company said, before the pandemic, I couldn't get the ear of the executive. Now I can get a board meeting whenever I want. So the other piece is, it's top of mind for the board and the top executive now that we have to have a strong resiliency program. So all of these are parts of digital transformation and your digital risk management program that's evolving due to the pandemic.